Hey everyone. So Boeing is one of the more interesting companies in the markets today. Demand for its products are so strong that it's got sales orders booked for years and years in advance. So I thought I'd go through this video and provide a brief overview of what's going on with Boeing stock. So the big news around Boeing is that its operations are constrained. The pandemic did not work well for the company. Supply chain constraints hampered its operations, as well as rising inflation made its contracts a bit more risky because it signed contracts, like I mentioned, for years in advance. But now that prices of materials have risen significantly, it's going to be more expensive for Boeing to fulfill those orders. So let's look at the details here. So the company hopes to bounce back around the year 2025, 2026, 2 to 3 years, where they can see their cash flows, annual free cash flow bounce back up to 10 billion. This year, they're only forecasting roughly 5 billion in free cash flow. So they're they're roughly half or below half of where they expect to be at full strength. So starting with they gave an update on their Boeing 737. This is the CEO talking, saying they're progressing in early inspection of affected airplanes. And this has been an issue that's been plaguing Boeing as well. They've been having some issues with production on the planes, safety issues, precautionary issues, and the FAA, the regulatory authority, is really clamping down, making sure production is going and there's no steps being skipped. And it's really hard for Boeing because it's got so much of an order backlog. It's really tempting to really push through and fulfill those orders, right? Because you know you've got all those sales ready to be delivered, and it's very tempting to try and speed up production to make those deliveries and then increase sales and try and get ahead of yourself here. So this is something Boeing really needs to pay closer attention to, be more cautious, which they said they are doing. So they still expect to deliver 450 737 planes this year. The delivery shortfalls, however, will impact summer deliveries for most of their customers, and Boeing says they feel terrible about that, right? But if you're a customer, you have few options where you can go with. It's pretty much Boeing, and you've got Airbus, and there are some subs. You have very few options if you want airplanes in mass quantities. You've got really two options to go with. They plan to increase their rate of production to 38 per month later this year. They now have over 1,737 MAX airplanes flying in the fleet. So they've really ramped up production of this airplane, this new model, even though they've had some issues with some parts and FAA coming down and telling them you've got to work through some of these issues. Demand, like I mentioned, remains very strong across all their product lines. They booked 107 net airplane orders in the first quarter, and on top of that, they got major customer commitments from Air India for over 200 of its planes, and Saudi Arabia, which ordered up to 121 of its 787 planes. So demand is not the issue for Boeing. They've got demand for planes going out several years into the future, and there's a huge backlog. And you might say, well, if there's such a backlog and supply is so constrained, why isn't competition rising up and a new player entering the industry and fighting for those orders and reducing those backlogs? And the answer to that question would be there is a very high uh, entry barrier to get into this market. You've got to invest billions and billions of dollars for the capacity to make airplanes. And on top of that, you've got to get regulatory approvals. It just takes a lot of capital and time, and it's uncertain after you make all of those investments that you will actually be able to take sales away from Boeing and Airbus. So for that reason, there hasn't been a major challenger to Boeing and Airbus for several years now. So they delivered 130 commercial airplanes in the quarter, including a strong month in March where they delivered 64. Now, if you extrapolate that rate, that would be close to 200 deliveries in a quarter, which the company does not expect to reach, but it just shows you the volatility in their deliveries right now because of supply chain issues, because of the difficulty in matching inventory, supply, regulatory approval, all of that. It's difficult. It's becoming more difficult for Boeing to deliver on these promises. Well, that's all I've got for this video. I hope I provided a nice little overview of what's going on with Boeing, the challenges, the orders, the customer demand, and really it's a matter of executing on their business. That's Boeing's biggest challenge is execution. They've got customer orders, they've got demand, everything is there for them so long as they can execute and produce effectively. That's the big challenge for Boeing, and let's monitor them, let's see the progress they make getting back to full strength. But that's all I've got. Thank you so much for watching. I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/Parkev for the 10 best stocks to buy now.